RMJ movie reviews again with an on the fly movie review. And this is really, really on the fly because this wasn't even planned. Of Summer of 84. Wow, guys. Again, for the millionth, trillionth, billionth, 250,000th time, I'm a child of the 80s. I was born in 81. So I grew up in the video store, cable, movie of the week era of entertainment and all that great cartoons, blase blase blase. And it's really interesting with this whole retro 80s craze thing because when I was in film school back in I believe oh 04, no, it was even farther back than that. It might have been 2000 2002 through 2004. I had an idea for a very long time of writing a retro 80s scary movie. Of course, what I love at this time was, and I had actually went back to school, not to actually finish a degree, but I just went back to my local community college to take excuse me guys, to take just an editing class because I wanted to kind of catch up on my editing skills. And because there wasn't a lot of editing softwares when I entered college in 2000. And anyway, I had a class where we would just randomly pitch ideas and all this stuff. And a lot of the people in that class were born in the early 90s, and some of them were even older than that. Like some of them were not teenagers during the 80s era. Some of them were like more like mid 20 somethings going into their 30s, so they had no interest really in this era. And I had pitched this idea, which I'm not going to give it away, I'm still going to keep it to myself, for this homage to slasher 80s horror film script. This is back in 2000, I believe, 6 or no, I can't remember. It was sometime in within that time, like 06, 07, or 08. It was somewhere in there. And everybody in the class was like, no, nobody wants to hear that. Boo. The whole class did that, guys. I swear to you. There was one guy who liked my idea, and he was the same age as me. And we both grew up in that time. Teacher hated it. Everybody in the class hated it. So this is what boggles my mind, that everybody is so 80s now, and I'm still working my everyday job. And I'm not being a hater, but I just am flabbergasted. I'm just flabbergasted. But anyway, that was my little tangent of how everybody is 80s all of a sudden now, when I was in the classroom pitching this way back 18, 17 years ago, 19 years ago. I don't know. I guess that's just the way the universe works out sometimes. But anyway, I'm all for this craze. I love it. The big screen adaptation of it. I love that film. What's another one? Another one with a tip to the 80s. Stranger Things, sue me, guys. I have not seen Stranger Things yet because I haven't signed up for Netflix yet, which I'm about to do pretty soon. I'm gonna catch up on all the seasons. I saw Turbo Kid. I actually saw Turbo Kid, and the reason I saw that was I was at a friend of mine's house. And I know, guys, I'm kind of like going on a tangent here before I start the movie review. But anyway, I saw Turbo Kid. I wasn't crazy about Turbo Kid. I really love their homages in there to like 80s fantasy, post-apocalyptic, teenage kids kind of movies. And I really thought the opening credits really nailed it. At least for me and my perspective of Turbo Kid, I kind of didn't enjoy it as much as those films like that I grew up back in the day, like the first Ewok TV movie, or The Last Starfighter, or Flight of the Navigator, or Hell Comes to Frogtown, or The Barbarian Brothers, or Conan the Destroyer, Red Sonja, any kind of one of those, The Road Warrior, any all that kind of stuff that came out in that era. I didn't really enjoy Turbo Kid. I enjoyed the homages and how close they were aesthetically in mimicking the 80s, but as far as the movie itself, I didn't really enjoy it. I thought it was okay, but not as much as everybody else did. But when I heard that the same guys who made Turbo Kid were making this Summer 84, and the milk carton thing freaked me out when I saw that poster, because I do remember growing up a little kid in the 80s and I remember seeing those milk cartons. And that was really real. I remember seeing those milk cartons. I remember seeing, back then, guys, those of you who are younger than us, 30 somethings, we had a cartoon character named McGruff. And he used to say, take a bite out of crime and don't talk to strangers. And they had all these don't talk to strangers specials. And this was like the rise of the after school program thing for TV. So there was a lot of stuff at the time. Different Strokes had an episode about where Arnold and Dudley were like almost molested by this ice cream shop owner guy. I rewatched that episode on YouTube lately, and it's still pretty freaky and unsettling. I'm surprised they got away with that. But anyway, there was a lot of that kind of stuff in the 80s. So Summer of 84 really plays to the and at the time, excuse me, digressing also again, John Walsh, who used to be the host of America's Most Wanted, his son was kidnapped and murdered in the early 80s too. So this was the rise of, kids don't, stay away from strangers. You might be kidnapped, you might be molested, you might be freaking murdered. So Summer of 84 plays to that undertone that was going on in the 80s. Also, and it tips the hat to, Stand By Me, Goonies, Monster Squad, Rad, Thrashing, all those kids in a group riding bike kind of movies that came out at that time. And I really enjoyed the film. I really, really did. I know, guys, I went on for 6 minutes before I talked about the movie, but I really, really enjoyed the film. I really did. I love the fact that it was a mystery. The fact that it was called Summer of 84 to me kind of added to the fact that I do remember at that time that things were a little bit loose. I mean, although I was a little kid, I think when the 80s ended, I was 8 years old. I was 8 years old when the 80s ended. So, but I'm old enough to remember living through the 80s, and I do remember it was a much more looser time. So the idea of this serial killer who's killing young boys, I think in this world of this film makes total sense because it was just a looser time back then. It was just really much more loose. It wasn't, at least on the surface, it wasn't as dangerous as it is now. I wouldn't dare let my children roam freely like our parents let us back in the 80s. It's just too crazy now. And there's a serial killer on the loose killing these boys, and it actually, the movie plays a lot of the jokes of the Goonies and Monster Squad and Stand By Me, and it has that kind of preteen boy naughty humor, but it does have a very unsettling, creepy, scary vibe. It's a terrifying idea that there's some lunatic who's kidnapping and murdering children, young boys in particular. It's very frightening. I think, having been the age of the boys in the movies already, it makes it even scarier to know that somebody is after you, and particularly wants to hurt you. So and especially being a male, it adds to this idea of like, I can't defend myself. I should be able to, it lends to other things. It makes it kind of adds a little bit more creepy vibe to it. And all the actors do a great job. The gentleman who plays because these kids, I don't have to tell the story, but the kids basically suspect that this police officer who lives across the street from them could be the killer who's slashing all these young boys. And I like the way he plays it. He plays it very well. There's a lot of little quirks and little things that he does with his performance. How he's very kind of cool, but you kind of still get that vibe that. And I will add that I have had this kind of vibe, not just in people that I've met in my life, where sometimes where they're smiling and everything seems cool, but there's still something there where you just kind of go like, I don't know. I'm not sure about this person, and he plays it very well. And as far as it, like I said, the fact that it takes place in the 80s lends it to that freer time, but also the rise of, we got to really protect our kids because there's some unsavory stuff going on out here. And the parents kind of slowly realizing that the times are not as safe as they were. So I really like that. Of course, I like. I can't remember, guys. What's the name of the song they played in the Karate Kid, in the original Karate Kid? I think is it Blue Summer? I can't remember the words. Blue Summer. Dun, dun, dun. Whatever that song, I can't remember the name of that song, guys. But you guys remember they played it when Daniel's son was with Elizabeth Shue on the beach. I forget the name of that song, but they use that song once in the movie. And there's references to Spielberg and Jedi, there's a couple of other references in the film. And there's a lot of clothing and stuff, the Nike and the MTV. That was really big stuff in the '80s. So I love that aesthetically. It really plays to that time. Of course, it has the synth score, which was in every breakdancing movie, almost every scary movie, Miami Vice, Don Johnson, Philip Michael Thomas TV show. There was a synth score. Carpenter was known for all his synth scores throughout the '80s, so it has that trademark synth score of like about every movie from that decade. It must have just been cheaper to make movies with synth back in the '80s, I'm assuming, but the score is good. And it starts out a little bit slow, but the mystery is pretty much engaging. I'm with the kids as they're going through the mystery, and it does throw out some good red herrings. Now I hear everybody saying there's a twist. I'm not gonna give anything away. I wouldn't go so far as to say it's a twist, but I will say that there is some stuff that unexpectedly happens, and I will say some of the stuff that unexpectedly happens threw me off. I mean, it really caught me off guard. It really caught me off guard, and it creeped me out too. It was creepy, and it caught me off guard. And I will say, towards the end, the movie does get frightening. It really starts. As a matter of fact, it was interesting because I was looking at the film and I didn't have to be at work the next day, so I was just kind of watching it late at night. And I had all the lights out, and I did have a moment like old school. I remember like the time digressing. My father rented Pet Sematary back in the early '90s when it very first hit video. And I never forget watching Pet Sematary in the basement by myself. And it was on the scene where they were talking about Zelda for the first time. And at that time, my parents had a furnace in the house. Then the furnace would go, it was behind you in the rec room, and it would go boom. And it would make this loud noise. And I never forget as they were talking about Zelda, and she was like, and doing all that, the furnace was like, boom, and I was just like, but I had one of those moments, towards the end of this film. I had a look over my shoulder moment. I think all of us have had that moment where when you watch scary movies that you're not supposed to be watching, at least back then when you were a kid, you always have that moment where like you look over your shoulder periodically, but and I'm not gonna give too much more away, but there's some creepy reveals in this film. And overall, it may not be for everybody, particularly because of the bleak subject matter. But I really enjoyed the film. I thought it was a good, creepy time. So if anybody is into this kind of stuff, check out Summer of '84. Subscribe to the channel. Hit the thumbs up. Hit the bell. And leave comments down below about Summer of '84. RMJ Movie Reviews. I'll see you soon.